Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mamdani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different...
If you've ever wondered what happens when the Democratic Party leans too hard into socialism, buckle up. Today's story is like friends saying, don't text your ex, and then, of course, they do it anyway. Bill Maher just went after AOC, Bernie Sanders, and rising socialist Zohran Mamdani. This isn't a small complaint, it's a full-on political intervention. Before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and comment to share if you think the Democratic Party is truly shifting left or just putting on a show for social media. Your thoughts help the channel and fuel the discussion. Picture this scene. Bill Maher, lifelong Democrat, like the sober friend at 2 a.m., watching everyone else take tequila shots. He glances at AOC and Mamdani and thinks, stop, think about political survival. But naturally, they don't. They push harder. AOC recently used the classic get to know him line to defend herself against critics, including Bill Maher. Basically, political Tinder for socialism, swipe right. The irony? AOC talks about open-mindedness and deep dialogue, but rarely gives that to Trump or most conservatives. Her selective empathy is striking, and even her party's moderates are raising eyebrows so high they're practically in orbit.
Say to the skeptics, though, in the party, or want to keep him at arm's distance, some who have some problems with him, even some fellow New Yorkers in the swing districts outside the city.
Get to know him. Get to know him. You know, this is not about having any kind of hard line. I think that if anybody is skeptical, I would say get to know him. And once you get into a room with him, kick the tires yourself and make your own assessment instead of just kind of making assessments from what you may see on television. If you have the ability to meet someone in person, you should meet him before you judge.
And Maher? He's not buying it. He pulled out one of his favorite comparisons. The view of capitalist South Korea versus socialist North Korea at night from space. One side lights up like Times Square. The other looks like someone forgot to pay the electricity bill. Then he turned to Venezuela, a country that once had more wealth than Poland back in 1990, before embracing socialism, only to end up with shortages, runaway inflation, economic collapse, and people fleeing in huge numbers. Basically a greatest hits mixtape of failed economies. Maher's message was simple. No place, not even New York, is immune. Living in NYC doesn't come with a secret formula that makes socialism work. He warned, don't try to reinvent the wheel, you might get run over. Then there's Mamdani. He's not promising magic solutions. He's personable, youthful, and enthusiastic. But Maher says many of his big ideas could lead into economic sinkholes. Maher looked at the Democratic Party and asked something like, is anyone else noticing this? Instead of celebrating the hype? AOC says Maher is insisting they all study history, and history, Maher points out, has never been beaten when it comes to socialism. Then, Maher hit a pressure point. Bernie Sanders. For decades, Bernie has pushed for single-payer health care for all, 340 million Americans. Yet when Vermont, with just 626,000 people, tried something similar, it didn't work out. If Vermont couldn't pull it off, why assume New York could?
Kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's Socialism for the 21st Century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century, or any century, a mess. It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude...
Maher often reminds people that Manny, AOC, and Bernie aren't your typical Democrats. They're socialists, but still support democracy, a completely different kind of political player. They wear that label proudly. The issue? Most voters don't notice the difference, which causes serious brand confusion. But Maher's biggest point: these same politicians who spend so much time criticizing capitalism owe all their fame and platforms to the very system they're railing against.
A dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think
Bernie's books, AOC's brand deals, social media following, and public influence, none of that would exist under real socialism. You don't become a superstar critic in a socialist system. Instead, the system critiques you, and suddenly you vanish.
Action is taking place when we have an administration in Washington which every day is moving us toward an authoritarian society.
This is America, New York City. Don't let them tell you any different. Don't let them tell you that we are the exception. We are the rule. And we set the bar for America. I'm talking to you, Donald Trump.
Let our words ring out so loud tonight that Andrew Cuomo can hear them in his $8,000 a month apartment. New York is not for sale.
And that's the contradiction Maher can't stand. The people saying capitalism is broken are the ones thriving in it. Now, that's not to say capitalism is perfect. Maher admits it's messy, inconsistent, and often frustrating. But compared to socialism, which has a perfect track record of failure, capitalism looks like the reliable partner in those viral toxic relationships. TikToks. One spouse causing chaos, the other quietly paying the bills. That's capitalism. The ex holding a gas can? That's socialism. Maher then turned to Abigail Spanberger, the newly elected Virginia governor, who predicted years ago that the party would collapse without returning to the center. Her advice was simple: don't brand yourself socialist. Elections are run by moderates. Extremists make headlines, not victories. She succeeded by staying moderate, not going radical. Did the party listen? Not at all. They tossed her advice straight into the ideological recycle bin. By now, Maher's frustration is obvious, like a disappointed parent. Moderates aren't running the Democratic Party. Its fringes are dominated by the loudest voices, representing Twitter more than actual voters. Supporting radical candidates isn't bravery, it's political Russian roulette. And the danger? 4 bullets in the chamber instead of just 1.
He's like a nice guy, and I congratulate him on an extraordinary political achievement. But before the whole left side of the country catches socialism fever, let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who, before the 24 election, said things like, "If the party didn't shift to the center, we will get torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again." Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, lady?
And the silence from the moderate majority? It's deafening. That quiet isn't neutrality, it's permission. When a party won't check its extremes, those extremes don't just influence the party, they become the party. The numbers back it up. In 2024, 13 Democrats won in districts Trump carried, and not a single one was a Democratic socialist. Every think tank studying those elections reached the same conclusion: move to the center. Even the New York Times agreed. The middle ground is the smart path, and the radicals are wrong. Yet the DNC ignored the advice, letting chaos take over instead of acting. They're not just sidelining moderates, they're doubling down on socialist messaging, quietly pushing aside capitalism, and flirting with socialism like, hey, you up?
The party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am I'm a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won in districts Trump also won, all moderates. This isn't rocket science. All the left-leaning think tanks have done autopsies on 2024, and they all came up with the same message: move to the center. Even the New York Times, which did so much to promote woke politics, now says the partisans are wrong. Moving to the center is the way to win. And Democrats should recognize the party moved too far left on social issues after Obama left office.
Maher argues that putting ideology above electability is the fastest way to lose elections. He points out that the DNC's biggest setbacks came when they went all in on woke theodorisics, symbolic crusades, and fringe issues. Voters don't want political TikTok performances. They want a party led by people who understand that Twitter isn't reality and who show competence and balance. And he's right. Americans, left, right, or center, want stability, not revolution. They want solutions, not socialism. Yet the DNC acts like a friend who keeps asking, "Why do I keep dating toxic people, even after all the warnings?" Maher might say. And still, they embrace socialism and then wonder why it backfires.
Quiet quitting capitalism and texting socialism that they're down to. Thing is, socialism will because socialism, to put it simply, just doesn't work and has never worked, like Kevin Federline.
Maher makes another big point. Socialism isn't just a failure, it's a spectacular one. It doesn't fade quietly. It crashes hard again and again. History shows the same pattern every time. Shortages, runaway inflation, broken services, and millions of people leaving the country. Look at Venezuela, where nearly 8 million people have fled the economic and humanitarian crisis in recent years, one of the largest migration movements in the world. Responding to AOC's claim that New York would be the rule, not the exception, Maher warns that if socialism really were the rule, the result wouldn't be prosperity, it would be collapse.
One of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
Then Maher goes back to Bernie's Vermont experiment. It's too obvious to ignore. On paper, single-payer healthcare sounds amazing, inspiring in speeches. But in reality, it fell apart like wet cardboard. Costs skyrocketed. The numbers just didn't work. And this was Vermont, one of America's most liberal states, basically the perfect testing ground. If Vermont couldn't make it work, how could New York, a huge, complicated, and expensive city, succeed?
Make your wishes come true. You're thinking of Zoltar. Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week.
Maher's final point is clear and blunt. On paper, democratic socialism can look appealing, like a dating profile full of perfect photos and inspiring quotes. But in reality, the results are very different, often ending in economic trouble. He's been making this point for years. Fringe ideology isn't what Americans want. People want pragmatism, competence, and common sense. If the DNC hopes to win in 2028 or beyond, they need to stop chasing ideological purity and start appealing to the voters who actually decide elections. Will they do it, or keep ignoring moderates at their own risk? Only time will tell. That wraps up today's commentary. Hit like and subscribe for more analysis, and leave a comment. Is the party just taking a temporary detour into fantasy, or is this a risky long-term move that could cost everything?